Coming up,
she had the love for the game. That's what makes you a champ. She didn't want to be good, she wanted to be great.
Cherokee boxer Cheyenne McKinney shares her experience as a champion boxer and how she gives back to her own students as a coach. And Coleman Cox, Cherokee Nation's prevention specialist, shares how the nation is helping its citizens with substance abuse.
We face the Trail of Tears, we face the boarding school era. We can face the opioid epidemic and we can win.
Plus, Carrie Lind is a Cherokee artist finding her way through clay by first knowing how her ancestors built their pottery.
It's all very intricate and it takes a lot of work and time to get to that place. But I thought I have to start there because that's the only way to start, really. You know, to honor the past, you have to go there.
Plus, a murder trial in the Cherokee Nation puts new laws to the test.
Archilla told him to quieten down and he didn't. The next thing you know, he stabbed him several times.
The Cherokees.
A thriving American Indian tribe.
Our history.
Our culture. Our people.
Our future.
The principles of a historic nation.
Sewn into the fabric of a modern world.
Hundreds of thousands strong. Learning, growing,
Succeeding.
And steadfast.
In the past, we have persevered through struggle.
but the future is ours to write.
Osiyo.
Osiyo. Osiyo.
These are the voices of the Cherokee people.
Osiyo, I'm Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. Welcome to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, capital city of the Cherokee Nation. For generations, the Cherokee story has been told by others. Today, through this groundbreaking series, we're taking ownership of our own story and telling it as beautifully and authentically as we can. I hope you enjoy these profiles of our people, our language, our history, and our culture. And please make plans to come visit us sometime. Wado.
Osiyo, it's how we say hello in Cherokee. I'm your host, Jennifer Lauren, at the Cherokee National Prison Museum in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, where you can learn more about the evolution of crime and punishment across Cherokee history. That's something that impacted the trial of accused murderer Archilla Smith. We'll have more on him later in the show. Cheyenne McKinney had a successful career as a female boxer, but as she tells us, her next career move embraces both her love of boxing and her passion for helping the Greenwood community, also known as Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
It's the fact that you can be aggressive, you can go hard and not get in trouble, and you actually get rewarded for it. And it's a test of your endurance, especially as a woman. My name is Cheyenne McKinney, and I used to box for the Reed Foundation. I was ranked number 2 in the world in 2010 for amateur boxing, and now I have my own boxing gym here in Tulsa.
We're gonna cut out a lot of that extra stepping. Now it's one step and you gotta be smooth with it, okay? So guards up, everything's
My coaching
fine.
style is very technical because that's how I was taught. There's room for error, but there's zero room for playing around, you know, because in boxing, I tell them, I take it to the extreme, like you can die, you can get ribs broken, you can get bones broken, all that, it's real like that. So I try to train them where they have that soldier mentality.
Okay. Elbows, Ryan, elbows, better.
Right now we are at my coach's gym where I did some training and sparring and all kinds of things here with Coach Reed.
This is where it goes now. It was a thing that she was the only girl, you know, that was boxing back then. I said a quick look. She was better than some of them guys. And the guys would get mad because I would put all my time into her. Right there, give me a 1-2.
As soon as I met Coach Reed, it's like, that's the turning point in my life.
1 second. Well, give me some. She had the love for the game. So that's what makes you a champ. She didn't want to be good, she wanted to be great.
My grandfather, he passed away in 2008, so that was my dad, my father, that's who was taking care of me. Coach Reed, I just fell in love with him like my dad or like a father figure. You don't get a coach that genuinely cares about you and that's gonna feed you, that's gonna make sure you've got a little bit of money, how's your mom, like cares for real, you know what I mean?
She could think outside the box. She was smart. She was always thinking one jump ahead of everybody. What did I say? You did it.
I was just with him every single day, and by the end of the year, I became a champion.
In the blue corner, the winner is Cheyenne McKinney.
Yeah!
I want to be able to do what my coach did for me. I look at them like they are my babies. Beautiful. Next.
Hey, that's the best since we've been in here on that drill that you've done. 100%. Great job. Cam?
You have homework, bring it to practice. You know, you can't box and not have good grades. You know, same with me. The other day, we went to my Cherokee side of the family. You know, I'm Black, white, and Native American, so I learned so much about my own family, and I knew I had someone on my Indian side that boxed, but he was a Golden Glove champ too. My grandparents on my Native side were Cherokee, and growing up, they always instilled to me, you're not just Black, you're Native too, you need to learn the language.
Kayla, look at you, you were a
And
doll.
I found this Bible. It's written in Cherokee. Oh. I did not know they had. I did not know.
Yeah.
They had it.
Wow.
I did not know.
It's got the alphabet on it.
They have songbooks.
I just think that the Cherokee language is such a beautiful native tongue, and especially when you're saying that Grandma Betty wasn't allowed to like speak it back in their day.
They would punish them. They spoke their language. They wanted them to speak English to be more white than native. So Mama, she always carried that.
Grandma would be so proud of us. It's
Yes,
okay.
she would. She would. She would. Y'all excuse me.
It's okay, Mom. I just wish that my pops could see everything that I've done.
She get results. It feels like I accomplished something. Let me tell her something.
Oh.
I love you too.
Thank you. Thank you for teaching me all you have.
Hey, thank you for letting me teach you.
Everything you taught me, I'm instilling these kids. I love the kids. I love what I do genuinely, and I want to be one of the baddest, best boxing coaches to come from Oklahoma.
When it comes to preventing addiction, there are some special people serving on the front lines. Coleman Cox is one of those people, and as he tells us, community change isn't something that happens overnight.
Prevention is about changing the environment so that an entire generation of people in a community have higher skills, they have more resources, they have more ability to thrive, they have less access to drugs and alcohol, they have greater access to treatment if they develop a problem with it. The community has ailments itself that need to be healed in order for the individual that lives in the community to be healthy. My name is Coleman Cox. I'm a certified prevention specialist with Cherokee Nation Behavioral Health Prevention Programs. To help explain the work that I do, I use the analogy of the duck in the pond. You have this duck and he's in the pond, and the duck is unhealthy. It might have some oil on it or might have a hurt foot, making it turn circles in the pond. You take the duck out of the pond and you clean it up, make sure he's got what it needs, but then you put it back into the pond and then you notice later that the duck is still unhealthy. A prevention specialist works on the pond itself, while somebody in the treatment industry works on the duck. Now, if you do one without the other, you're not going to see a lasting impact. The two must work together so that the environment is healthy and the individual in the environment is healthy. I grew up in a small community. I had a lot of support. I had 2 working parents who worked very hard to provide me with a great life. I had lots of opportunities to succeed. All the things that you would expect would lead somebody down the straight and narrow path. So I went off to college. One night I was in my dorm room and I overdosed. I can't do this on my own. My life has become unmanageable. I need help. I went to a treatment center, which helped me understand the underlying forces that were driving my need to seek a sensation other than being sober. There was some untreated trauma from childhood that I had never told anybody about. I didn't realize it, but I was self-medicating to cover that trauma. I hit my knees and I prayed to God and I said, God, take this addiction from me. If you're there, if you're listening, and you have good plans for me, take this away from me. And I believe He did. I worked my recovery. I didn't fight against my recovery. And so all these new skills that I put into place helped me every day to stay sober. I started with Cherokee Nation at the Jack Brown Treatment Center. And I started as a technician who worked directly with the clients on day-to-day activities. And I noticed that there were some clients that would leave and they would come back, and they would leave and they would come back. What can I do to help them and more people like them so that they're not in this vicious cycle constantly in and out? We do know from science that 1 in 10 individuals will struggle with substance abuse. It's a genetic issue.
When you're born a Native American, you already have the predisposed genetic material to misuse substances. We know through biology and epigenetic research that if you've had a parent or a grandparent, who have been through a significant stress, such as forced removal, such as boarding schools, that can translate in epigenetics and into the DNA of their children and grandchildren. It gets stored in your brain, the trauma. We know a lot more about trauma now. There's so much misunderstanding about what addiction is, and therefore people have a misunderstanding how to treat addiction. So whenever you're addicted to a substance, that's really what your world revolves around. You may have children, you may have loved ones, but sometimes it's hard to see those other folks when you're consumed with trying to feel better. Someone who's never used drugs, it's really hard for them to understand that because their brain's not wired that way. Their chemical makeup of their brain changes. The neural pathways that you have get moved around. It changes literally how you think, how you see your environment, how you interact with your environment, and how you emotionally respond to your environment as well.
Those natural sensation seekers, they're gonna struggle. And then we're gonna look at them and demonize them because they struggled. We created an environment that made it easy for them to fall into substance use. We've got to go the opposite way. We've got to provide protection for our vulnerable populations. Cherokee Nation provides a ton of resources for people who are struggling with substance abuse disorder. We have peer recovery support, we have treatment, we have medication-assisted treatment. The story of the Cherokee people is one of resilience. It is one of facing struggle after struggle and finding a way to continue on. When we're isolated, we are not effective. We must come together as a Cherokee people. We face the Trail of Tears, we face the boarding school era. We can face the opioid epidemic and we can win.
Not long after Cherokee people were removed to Indian Territory, all eyes were on our tribe as we set up our own judicial system. In this Cherokee Almanac, we look back at the murder trial of Archilla Smith. The years immediately following the Cherokee Nation's forced relocation to Indian Territory were a violent era of civil war among the Cherokees.
There's a lot of tension that's here once the Rosses and the removal party all ends up here in Indian Territory. Just a few months after the final detachment arrives in 1839, you have the brutal killings of Major Ridge, John Ridge, and Elias Boudinot.
We'd done away with Klan revenge law a long time back, but there was still a lot of revenge killing done. It was just chaotic, and there was lots of tension and lots of killing.
Although the Cherokee Nation had ratified a new constitution in late 1839 and passed laws concerning criminal and civil codes, it had yet to test its court system with a capital punishment case. The 1840 murder trial of Archilla Smith in Tahlequah, Indian Territory, would soon change that.
So Archilla Smith was one of the signers of the Treaty of New Echota, which is the infamous treaty that exchanges Cherokee lands in the east for Cherokee lands here in the west. After they sign the treaty, most of them move over here into present-day Oklahoma, into Indian Territory at the time. There's a few written records that say that he had a little bit of a hot temper. Archilla Smith was good friends with Stand Watie, who was also known to kind of be of similar character.
Late in 1839, Smith was visiting friends on Caney Creek, south of Tahlequah, capital of the Cherokee Nation. A young Cherokee, John McIntosh, a member of John Ross's Nationalist Party that opposed Cherokee removal, was also present. By the end of the day, McIntosh lay dead, stabbed to death in front of witnesses.
McIntosh is kind of just making a big ruckus there at the camp and riding his horse back and forth.
He had been drunk and was running his horse up beside Archilla's and aggravating him and making a lot of racket. And Archilla told him to quieten down, and he didn't. And next thing you know, he stabbed him several times.
Several months passed before a warrant was sworn out for Smith's arrest. He was captured in late November of 1840, and his trial set for December 15th.
We didn't have a jail built or anything like that, so they were allowed to go home and get their affairs in order for their family.
The trial opened with jury selection under Judge Looney Price. Stand Watie served as defense counsel and entered a not guilty plea on behalf of his friend Archilla Smith. The court brought in interpreters for the various Cherokee, Creek, and English language speakers taking part in the trial.
This trial is remarkable for the dignity and decorum under which it was carried out.
Cherokee Nation's legal system received national attention when the trial was covered for the New York Journal of Commerce by noted writer John Howard Payne.
John Howard Payne had written best-selling plays. He knew how to capture drama.
This is the first time that the Cherokees are actually conducting a trial like this. Even the jury, they had so many questions that they were asking the judge because they didn't understand a lot of the terms that were being used during the trial. And it ends up being a hung jury.
Christmas Day passes with no court, but with instructions to convene a new jury. This new trial is presided over by Chief Justice Jesse Bushyhead, a minister and much beloved figure. During his instructions to the jury, Judge Bushyhead reminds them at length that the old clan and blood laws cannot be applied to this case. He carefully explains to them that there are degrees of death under the current law and that only a willful murderer can receive capital punishment.
If the most unquestionable proofs appear that he is guilty, he must then suffer the extreme penalty of the law. For it is the principle of our present written law not to harm the innocent.
After rehearing the testimony and asking many questions, the second jury deliberates and eventually returns with a guilty verdict for Smith. He is sentenced to hang on January 1st, 1841.
After Archilla Smith is convicted, we don't have a gallows in place at this point to be able to hang him from. They end up taking him outside of town a little bit to a tree, and there's a lot of spectators that are there.
John Howard Payne's trial write-up in the New York Journal of Commerce the following April is considered the first time a trial of any Native nation was covered by the media.
It's really important that we have these kinds of accounts that enable us to see how judicial proceedings are happening. It affirms the sovereignty of the Cherokee Nation.
You might say it's a milestone because it sort of symbolizes our intention, the willingness of both parties to be governed civilly.
Jalagi Edewonihi. Let's talk Cherokee.
Hi, Sanaz. What are you doing?
Osiyo Uwodia. Jalagi Edewoni's Gasti.
Hawa.
Osta.
Sanaz. Kadoha dane?
Tohi. Iya daneti. Nigadane.
Ni ejula tohi. Iya daneti. Nina dane.
Osta nadane.
Carrie Lind is a Cherokee potter who understands her pottery as living, breathing pieces. Her connection to pottery art and her Cherokee roots stokes her ambition to help other women in vulnerable situations.
There's something special about pottery and clay and the connection with the earth. Most of the job is to listen what it has to say. So I might start a pot with this big, grand idea of what I want it to be, and it might not want to be that. Whatever I end up with, it's a negotiation between me and between the earth. It's saying what it wants to say, but it's also listening to me, and I'm listening to it, and it's our own private conversation. I'm Carrie Lind, and I'm a Cherokee potter. Pottery had been lost since removal. It was something that was always done, and it was done for a reason, and we lost that. And so I just wanted to continue to do that work because it was something that should have never stopped. I came into pottery actually after my grandmother had passed. I was at a local restaurant. There was this woman that was sitting across the way, and she looked just like my grandmother and kind of had the same demeanor and the same feeling. I just kind of stared at her for a long time because it was almost like seeing a ghost. I apologized to her and I explained to her that I had just lost my grandmother and that she reminded me of her. She asked me what my grandmother's name was, and before I could really even finish, she already knew exactly who my grandmother was. They had grown up in Indian boarding school together and were good friends. It wasn't until later that I realized that she had single-handedly revived Cherokee pottery. Anna Mitchell did. Her story from going from boarding school and losing her language and so much to reviving something that had been lost just really inspired me. Anna Mitchell, she's the grandmother of Cherokee pottery. She's just an inspiration to everyone. The way that I see pottery is like, it's this connection between the people and the land. We had been removed and we lost that connection to the land. So what she did, it was bringing that connection back. With Cherokee saying, we're still here. I wanted to start with a good foundation. I wanted to learn how to work with the earth and how to process clay by hand. It's all very intricate and it takes a lot of work and time to get to that place. But I thought I have to start there because that's the only way to start, really. You know, to honor the past, you have to go there.
My name is J.J. Lind. I am a documentary filmmaker and installation artist. I live in New York City. My sister is Carrie Lind. She's a traditional Cherokee potter. I believe that things happen in the order that they're meant to happen, that each of us are born with skills and talents and things that we're meant to contribute to our people if you feel that calling. And that calling is a responsibility. and often a burden, literal burden. Like, carrying clay is heavy. The amount of work and physical labor and anxiety and thought that goes just into that one little pot, from the ground to the fire, that's a burden, and a blessing. She understands that, and she wants to embody that. She's bringing what she carries in her blood and the knowledge that she's inherited and what her mentors and teachers have taught her. She embodies that and then records what she's witnessing for future generations.
My name is Richard Zane Smith. I've been a potter since 1984 full-time, and one of the things I've been interested in living here is to help us return to our roots. When I met Carrie, the first thing I noticed, was that she was fascinated with ancient roots too. I tried to encourage her, don't worry about being creative yet. Just try to reproduce these ancient techniques. Get them under your skin, get the ancestors going in your fingers again. Because something happens when you start creating what you might call reproductions, but they're not necessarily. They're just using the same tools and the same things that your ancestors did. There's a connection that happens and something awakens up. And I saw that happening with her. And then in time, I'd encourage her to try something a little more creative. With Carrie, it seemed pretty obvious that we were going to get along pretty well together. Carrie's one of those who she's teachable, and she's humble enough to make errors and to be able to say, what did I do wrong? I think it's when I see her firing, and when she's in there and she's actually, right around the fire, and she's really focusing on what she's doing with that fire, and she's pulling out a pot, that's glowing, and she's taking it out and putting it on some pine needles, and she's feeling the heat and the incredible intensity of that moment, where it's kind of scary, but it's also exciting because the pot's glowing, and you have these gloves on, and you're pulling it out and putting it out there. When I see that, then I think this is going to be something she's going to want to keep doing.
As long as I'm physically able to make it, I want to continue making it and continue making it the same way that I do. Just being able to come together and not have to talk, but be able to have that kind of meditative process together, I think is really powerful and special. And I want to share that with other women, especially. And we're still here for a reason. We didn't survive because we were weak. We survived because we were strong. And I think just being Cherokee in general and being here is a gift in itself. You can do this out of nothing. You can take dirt and you can create something beautiful, and you don't have to have anything to do that. It's all given to us. It's a gift, and all you have to do is receive it.
We hope you enjoyed our show. And remember, you can always watch entire episodes and share your favorite stories online at OsiyoTV. There is no Cherokee word for goodbye because we know we'll see you again. We say, do da da go hunt e. Wado.